welcome to Literary Prospects, where we talk to authors and literary professionals about books, publishing, and the writing life. I'm Kelley Vick. I'm the host of the program, and in just a moment, it will be my pleasure to introduce today's guest. But first, a reminder that if you like what you hear, please do take a moment to subscribe. It helps us out, and you can make sure you never miss an episode. Also, we've opened a Literary Prospects shop, so if you're looking for bookish shirts, totes, and gifts, please check that out at literaryprospects.etsy.com. And to grab books featured on the podcast and check out more curated book lists, you can visit the Literary Prospects bookstore on bookshop.org. We'll leave all those links below in the show notes. And now, let's introduce today's guest. Jennifer Belle is the best-selling author of 4 novels: Going Down, which was named Best Debut Novel by Entertainment Weekly, High Maintenance, Little Stalker, and The 7-Year Bitch. She's also the author of Animal Stalkers, a picture book for children. Her stories and essays have appeared in the New York Times Magazine, the Wall Street Journal, The Independent, Harper's Bazaar, and others. Her 5th novel, Swanna in Love, is out now. Jennifer Belle, thank you so much for coming on, and congratulations on Swanna in Love, your 5th novel and the first one in more than 10 years. A starred review in Kirkus Reviews calls Swanna in Love a complex and bittersweet coming-of-age novel, both a riotous page-turner and a thoughtful examination of girlhood, vulnerability, and sexual power. Publishers Weekly says whip-smart dialogue and a convincing teenage perspective add heft to this comic novel. Belle breaks hearts with the story of Swanna's first love. Author Tom Perrotta says it's an addictive read, a book as genuinely funny as it is transgressive. And Joanna Rakoff, author of My Salinger Year, says the novel is utterly delightful, by turns deeply funny and profoundly moving. The most pitch-perfect portrait of adolescence since The Catcher in the Rye. So, with that, how would you describe Swanna in Love? What can you tell us about the story?
Well, it's about a 14-year-old girl who has a love affair with a 38-year-old married man. That's at the heart of the story. It's about a girl who is at summer camp having the time of her life, and she gets on the bus to go home to New York, and she's pulled off the bus because she's told her mother is going to come pick her up. She's very dubious because her father's expecting her at the bus stop in New York City, and her mother arrives about 6 hours late with a new boyfriend, and they embark on this terrible road trip. They pick up her brother, and then they go to an artist colony that doesn't allow kids, and she and her brother have to sleep in the back of a truck. So she looks for a way to get home to New York.
And chaos ensues.
And chaos always ensues.
Where did the concept for the book come from? What was the spark that got this one started for you?
Well, it's sort of a long story. This whole book was a 2-paragraph flashback in another book I was working on for a decade. And I had always wanted to write this story of this girl who goes to this artist colony that doesn't allow kids. And for a number of reasons, I didn't think I could do it. And so it's based on something that really happened to me. That part of the story really happened to me, being picked up hours late from a ghost town of a camp after everybody had already left, and having to deal with these bizarre circumstances of wanting so badly to go home and get to school on time in the fall, and being sort of stuck in this other world. And so that's was based on my real life. The rest of the book, the affair with the older man, is sort of a composite of a lot of unsavory relationships I had with older men, but nothing like this, nothing like what the girl does in this book. That was made up.
You've said that in some ways this book could be considered a prequel to your debut novel going down. How is that?
I think that's really true. I mean, I didn't intend for that to happen. I've never written a prequel or a sequel, and all the characters are different, all the names are different. But it's very much my first book, Going Down, is about a 19-year-old girl who puts herself through NYU as a hooker.
Mm.
And this girl, Swanna, is very much the same girl 5 years younger, 5 years earlier. And the characters are similar, the brother and the mother, of course. Um, so that's why I think it almost could be a sequel. If people really love Going Down, I think they would like this. This book, ironically, is much filthier.
Well,
Uh,
that kind
wait,
of that leads right into to my next question was this novel goes into what might be considered dangerous territory with, a 14-year-old protagonist involved in an affair with a much older man, as you said. Were you concerned at all about how this one might be received?
I was extremely concerned, and I didn't really think I could do it at all in this particular moment in publishing, where everybody is extremely politically correct and concerned about people's feelings and emotions, and trying not to stir up people's feelings and emotions, which is exactly what art's supposed to do.
Mhm.
So it's a strange time to come out with something that has very difficult subject matter. Um, but there was something about COVID and being in seclusion, and um, my family went upstate away from everybody for 14 weeks, and I was in the heart of writing this book, and um feeling secluded, and not in control of my environment, not doing the things I wanted to do. It gave me that frustrated feeling that I had when I was a teenager, stuck with my mother in this place I didn't want to be. And there was something about that really brought the book out of me.
Mhm.
But yes, I was concerned, and I lead writing workshops. I'm a writing teacher, and I bring in my own work to the workshop. And I started to notice that some of the people in my workshop who are quite concerned about political correctness, and quite a part of that movement, they started to like this book and sort of go with it and believe in the relationship and believe in the girl and believe in the older man and almost root for them. And then I knew I was really onto something.
Yeah.
So yes, I was very concerned, but I also had hints along the way that maybe I could do it.
And there are obvious parallels to Lolita here, but you say you were more inspired by a much less obvious classic. Can you talk about what that was?
Yes, I think you're talking about the book True Grit by
Oh, yeah.
Charles Fortis, right? So, because I've spoken about that, and a friend of mine gave me that book, and I had never read it before, even though it sold, 70 million copies or something around the world, and it was made into two different movies, which I never saw. But I read it, and I didn't think I would like it. It's about a 14-year-old girl, and my character is 14, and she embarks on a trip to avenge the murder of her father. And like in the very first scene, practically the first scene, I think she's on a train alone. And then the second scene, she's standing in a town square watching a triple hanging.
Wow.
And I was I was so astounded that a writer, talk about raising the stakes, talk about really shocking the reader. I mean, this little girl just standing alone watching a triple hanging, and then all of the adventures that she has. She hires a bounty hunter, and then this other bounty hunter comes along, and the dialogue is best dialogue I've ever read in a book. And I just thought, if she can do this, if Charles Portis can create this 14-year-old character that we care about so much, then I can try to do this too.
Mhm. Let's talk about this amazing first person 14-year-old voice in the novel. It's told from Swanna's perspective, as we know. How did you capture this adolescent voice and point of view so well?
It was very easy, and thank you. Thank you for these incredibly nice things about my book. As I said, I was stuck in the country. I was feeling frustrated myself. I I in all of my books, I feel like I'm all of my characters.
Mm,
Whether it's, the mean bus driver or the whoever it is, I'm the main character, but I'm all the characters. But with this character, more than ever before, I just completely became her in my mind. And it wasn't hard. She just is part of me, she's
mhm.
just me. I think she's the closest to me of any of my characters, and it wasn't hard at all.
The book is very funny, but it's also at times quite dark and deeply moving. How do you strike that balance between humor and gravity, and why do you think that's important?
Well, balance is important. Um, I I think that the key to humor, like what when it's very hard to make somebody laugh out loud, and it's very
Mhm.
hard to make me laugh out loud. And I started to notice that when I laughed out loud, it was because deeply related to what the person was saying. And often I would laugh out loud at a very inappropriate moment. And what I think I've discovered is that um, we laugh out loud when we connect, when we relate, when we deeply relate. And often that's to pain. That's often to somebody's pain.
Mm,
So the way to be funny, I think sometimes, is to be honest and to be completely open and talk about your pain, and definitely not to try to be funny. And
mhm.
so how I struck that balance was by not paying any attention to balance whatsoever, and by not paying attention to that idea of I want to be funny now, I want to be serious now, but to just completely be myself the way I would be in if that were really happening to me. And I do at the end of a book go through and survey where we might need a break. Like if there's a long stretch of stuff that's too serious, I might put something in from somewhere else that's a little bit lighter or funnier, or a refreshing image or something to alleviate the tension if it's
Yeah.
going on too long. So I do pay attention to the balance of the tone of a book in the end, but certainly not when I'm writing it. I'm just writing. I'm giving you these incredibly long answers.
I love the
I'm
long
so
answers.
sorry.
No, no, no. The long answers are wonderful. I really, yeah. Here at Literary Prospects, we love long answers. I like all the info.
You're getting it.
Uh, After much literary success, you stopped publishing for more than a decade. We mentioned earlier this is your first novel in was it 13 years?
It might be 14 years. We keep saying 13 years because it's hard to imagine going higher than that.
Yeah. Keep it at 13.
Yeah.
Well, why the long break?
Well, I didn't set out, it's sort of the same thing about balance.
Yeah.
I got out of balance. I didn't set out to go that long. I was writing and I was teaching. I was writing constantly. I never stopped writing and I didn't feel blocked, but I didn't really feel like publishing. And I think looking back, well, first of all, I just want to say I feel sad that I did that to myself because I'm having so much fun now talking to people and reading from the book and being out there and seeing my book in bookstores is the most incredible feeling I think I've ever had. And I'm sorry that I deprived myself of that.
Mm,
And I'm incredibly grateful that I got to get published again because sometimes when you step away that long, it's impossible to come back. And I'm never going to let it happen again. I'm gonna write my ass off uh, until I drop dead. But I just didn't want to publish a book. And I think that the reason why is that I was not writing the book I wanted to write at the time.
mhm.
I think I wanted to write this book. I think I always wanted to write this book and didn't feel that I could. So I think that contributed to because once I started writing this book, it just came pouring out of me, as they say, um and I did it quickly.
Why did you feel like you couldn't? Is it the subject matter, or what do you feel like was sort of stopping you, what giving you that feeling that you couldn't
Yeah.
write this one?
Well, I'd had a talk with my that sound is my dog lapping water.
Oh,
Um I
there's a dog over
a
here
long
too, so
time. That was a lot of water. That's actually one of my favorite sounds, but not during a Zoom.
me
Um,
too.
um, well, I had had a talk with my first agent, my former agent, who was a fantastic agent and person, and um, stopped representing authors.
Mm,
But when I met with her and I told her that I wanted to write this story, she was a bit discouraging. And she said nobody would want to read about a 14-year-old girl, and that would be YA. And in YA, this might be difficult subject matter. I mean, this was a long time ago,
mm,
but I was surprised because I came to her with this sort of burning passion to write it and this excitement that I was going to finally write this story that I had always seen in my mind as this road trip book,
mhm,
and she really discouraged it. I mean, she just didn't think it was viable at all. And I love young adult books, but I had created quite a good adult audience, and I didn't want to write a young adult book and sort of start again. And I didn't feel that this was a young adult book,
mhm,
strangely, just the way True Grit isn't a young adult book, although my teenagers both loved it also. But because it's just great. I mean, a great book is a great book. But so that was one reason that I never wrote it. And then Me Too came and the environment just became more and more tense. And I started to read the books on the banned bookshelf at the Strand bookstore.
mhm.
And I loved them so much because they were so refreshingly honest. Like I'd read uh Kramer versus Kramer I read, which I'd never read before. It's so good. And the guy is like walking down the street and he's commenting about some fat woman he sees. And I'm just laughing and that could never be published today.
Mhm,
That you so and I work with a lot of writers and help people get book deals, and then I get to work with them as they're working with their editors and at the publishing houses, and there's actually a list of words they give writers now that they cannot use, and fat is one of them. And
wow.
um you can't say anything. Imagine taking words away from writers.
Mhm,
And so I just said, oh, forget it. There's just no way I can write about this time of no seat. The book takes place in 1982. I think I forgot to say that.
mhm,
And in 1982, there were no seatbelts, there were no cell phones, there was no safety, there was nothing. We were sort of just out there on our own. Parents were very different back then, and not all parents, but some parents. And it was a different time. And you, a lot of publishing houses would really censor you from even writing about that time, honestly.
mhm,
So I didn't know what to do, but I knew I wanted to write it. And Stuck Alone, I did write it, and I just didn't something about that made me not worry anymore about other people. I just wrote it.
What was then, once you sat down and wrote it, what was the road to publishing like, for you with this one? What actually did you face any sort of pushback or
Yes, I did, but it all happened pretty quickly. I got a fantastic agent
Mhm.
who I just sent it to my dream agent, and I said, because my agent had retired, and I wrote him a sort of cryptic note saying this might not be for you and it might not be for anybody. Not really a winning pitch, actually, for the writers out there. Don't do that. And and he took it. And I thought we would I said to him, should we make her older? Should we make him younger? And he said, I kind of like it the way it is. And we just sent it out. And a lot of people seemed concerned about the subject matter. They didn't exactly express that. I thought I would have a lot of meetings where they'd say, "We'll publish it, but you have to do this," or, "We have to change this," or, "We can't make." I don't know what they would say, and I was sort of, I mean, I'm realistic, and I I wanted Swanna to see the light of day, and I was open to making it palatable for today's world. And then Johnny Temple at a company called Akashic, which is a publishing house that I had admired for a long time because they published the author Arthur Nersessian, who's a friend, and I'm a huge fan of his. And um, Johnny wanted to publish it just the way it was. And I said, we could do this, we could do that, we could make her older, we could make him younger, we could make, and he said, no, let's publish it this way. And um, I thought he was taking a huge risk. And the other day he said, I don't know why you keep saying that I took a huge risk. There was no risk. And I think that's the single nicest thing anybody's ever said to me,
Mhm.
because authors hear the word risk a lot. And it's very nice to just have your work liked.
Yeah. What do you find different? We've touched on this a little bit, but what do you find very different about the industry publishing today versus when you first started out?
Well, everything feels different. I mean, I feel like this is my first book, even though it's not. But
Mhm.
uh, the money's different. The the money is less. The perks are less. Um, there's more fear, I guess, the feeling of risk that they're
Mhm.
making an investment, and there's more concern that your book could actually hurt someone. I mean, the idea of a book hurting someone is so strange to me,
Mhm.
because you could close it. I mean, it's not a loaded weapon, but and then, of course, social media has changed things. A lot falls on the writer's shoulders to do all of that stuff,
Mhm.
which is a little bit foreign for some of us, but it's also fun and great. And so I don't know. I mean, publishing moves on. I'm different, so I'm just completely different. Like, somebody reminded me yesterday at a reading. I gave a reading at a wonderful bookstore called Watchung in Montclair, New Jersey, and another writer was there who I hadn't seen in years, and she told me the story of how I had said to her, "Why don't I have go-cards?" And it's so hilarious. Go-cards were these free postcards that they used to put in restaurants, in these, I don't know, do you remember go-cards?
No, that's I was about to ask you what they were.
Yeah, they were these postcard advertisements that were quite beautiful,
Uh,
that were like art postcards, but they were advertisements, and I don't know what they were, but just the idea that I wanted that,
yeah.
and that I told her that I wanted that, and she said, "And I wanted them too." And we just laughed and laughed, thinking about how much we wanted something that our publisher wouldn't give us. And now I just feel just like the luckiest girl in the world, and I don't want anything. I'm just happy. Like, I'm so excited to talk to you and have my book published. So I'm very different. I'm not on some kind of mission to get anything. I hope we delete that whole answer.
No, I think it's a
Please.
great
No,
answer.
I hope we delete.
What does your writing routine look like?
Well, I work at a place in New York City called the Writers' Room,
Mhm.
which is sort of a New York, it's an urban writers colony, you could say.
Mhm.
It's like a WeWork for writers. And it's a giant loft that's open 24/7, and nobody can bother me there. And I can take off my shoes and I can sob and I can sit in a big velvet chair. And so I go there. I love to write in cafes too,
Mhm.
but there's something about going to this writing space where I can just get to work, and I love it. So I go there every day, and I lead a lot of workshops, writing workshops. So I'm always in conversation with writers, and a big part of my writing routine is writing in a journal,
Mm.
which I do very religiously. And there's different ways to get that writers approach the page. Um, I heard Paul Simon give this interview once, and he said that he likes to start a song by just writing down a fact. Like, there's a wall in China, it's 1,000 miles long, or there's a girl in New York City who calls herself a human trampoline. Like, he writes down a fact that he knows, and he just writes. And I know a lot of writers who they start their writing session by reading, or some people take a walk, but a big part of my writing life is writing in my journal, and I sort of get all the nonsense out of my mind that's bothering me, and I connect to the writer inside of myself. Like, I sort of connect to myself just by writing in a journal, and then when I do that for a while, I'm ready to face the real page.
That's great. I love that. And I love that idea of starting with a fact. I've never
Yeah.
tried that, but I'm going to.
I often start a scene by just saying where my character is, like I was sitting
Mhm.
on the subway or I was walking down the street, even if I change it later, just to set myself somewhere is good.
Yeah. You mentioned that you lead a writing workshop and you've been instrumental in getting a lot of novels out into the world over the years. Why do you feel called to do that, to lead these workshops and give back to the writing community in that way?
Oh, I don't know. I love writers, and um I love to have a real conversation, and I'm not crazy about the classroom setting.
Mm.
I was a big dropout academically. So this has worked for me. I don't really know how or why. I don't know how to answer that question, but I like it. It's sort of a lifestyle choice. And I was in a workshop and I depended on it, and I depend on my workshop to bring in my work every week and discuss the work. It's like it's a lonely life writing,
Mhm.
and it's so funny because you're all alone, weeping at your desk, dressed in rags, and then you're out in the world wearing lipstick, and pretending to know what you're talking about. But it's a crazy life because you're alone for a couple years and then you're talking to people. But I like these workshops because it keeps me in the world talking to people every single week. And it's good for my work. I mean, basically, we're just trying to make our work better all the time.
What do you feel like is your best piece of advice that you give to new or aspiring authors that you are
Oh,
working
I love to give advice.
with?
Well, okay, I'll tell you what I think is my best piece of advice. My best piece of advice is, don't think that you have to have a big philosophy or a big idea or a big plot or a big point or a big story that you need to tell.
Mhm.
All you have to do is have a tremendous desire to express yourself. And if you have a tremendous desire to express yourself, you can write a book. You can sink into a character who's not unlike yourself and let that character have tiny little adventures, which I think of as scenes. And they
Mhm.
don't have to be in any kind of order. Do not start at the beginning. And I can go on and on about why you shouldn't start at the beginning. And just sink into that character who's not unlike yourself and let her meet a love interest. Let her get fired from a job. Let her have an argument on the subway. Let her have sex with an older man. Just let her have these little adventures and just write them individually and eventually think of them as bricks that will eventually lead to building a house.
I love that. And now I have to know a little bit more about what you would say about not starting at the beginning.
Okay, well, if you have you ever watched like what's your favorite sitcom of all time, like Cheers or Friends or Seinfeld or uh, Mary Tyler Moore? Let's take Mary Tyler Moore show. Well, you tell me what you were going to say.
Modern Family popped into my head, but then Seinfeld is great too. All of them, all the ones you mentioned, actually.
Okay. So, if you've ever watched a sitcom like that from beginning to end, like a sitcom that took place over many, many seasons, years, and then you go back and you watch the pilot episode,
Mm-hmm.
it seems so strange. Like the characters sound unlike themselves. It
Mm-hmm.
feels a bit canned. They haven't found they're not walking like the characters walk later on. They're not talking like the characters talk later on. But it's in the can. They can't change it. And it's the same for writers, whether you're just starting out or whether you've published 5 books. When you start a book, it doesn't the scenes you write in the beginning do not match the scenes that you write at the end. The characters evolve, the voice evolves, everything about the world evolves. So you have to go back and change the beginning anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
that's one reason not to start at the beginning. Another reason not to start at the beginning is you write chapter 1 and you think, "Oh, congratulations to me. That went really well." And then maybe you write chapter 2 and maybe you write chapter 3 and maybe you write chapter 4 and you're thinking, "This is going great." And then you get to the part where the little kid gets run over by the car, or you get to the part where the parents get divorced, or you get to the part that is much harder to write than those other parts. And you
Mm-hmm.
think, okay, well, I did so well with chapters 1 through 4. I deserve a break. And you sort of put it aside, and then a week passes, and another week passes, and you can't write that chapter, but you can write the rest of it, but it's just that chapter's hard. So that's
Mhm.
why I say don't write in any order. You don't know what the order is yet. You don't know what the beginning of your book is yet. Sometimes the beginning comes pouring out of you, but sometimes it's very hard to find. So just write in these little segments called scenes, and then in the end, figure out the order and give yourself all kinds of permission to skip the hard scenes and write the other scenes. Um, that's why I say don't start at the beginning because it ultimately makes your job almost impossible. I don't know many writers who start at the beginning, actually.
That makes so much sense to me, and I love that. Because I mean, that's how I just sort of have scenes come to me and write them and then try to
Exactly.
rearrange as necessary later on, but I always kind of think, how does anybody just start and then write all the way through? I need to get a bunch of stuff out on the page and start scrapping and putting it over here and over there. I need all the material before I know where it goes.
Yes,
Yeah.
but you have to keep it in one place. Like you have to everything it can be all out of order, but you should keep it together because you don't want it all over the place.
How do you organize your work?
Well, I'm the least organized person in the world, but I have a document that's my novel and everything goes in that. It's not in separate documents all over the place. And I have this system called the survey that I like to teach, that I like to make seem very, very important. But it's not. But it's really a way of outlining after you've written instead of writing what you're gonna
Mm.
do, which I don't understand.
Mhm.
I outline what I have actually done, which is much more fulfilling and much more helpful for a number of reasons. It makes themes emerge. I can see how to arrange the novel and handle that thing you called balance in the beginning, where I can see, oh, we've had 10 scenes in a row with the love interest and there's been no mention of work or family. So I have total, by doing the survey after I've written, I have complete control over the material, especially passage of time, which is a big thing that can get away from people.
Great. What do you know now that you wish you'd known when you first started out?
Um, that's a really good question, Kelley. What do I know now? I know that I'm not going to lose 20 pounds before the book comes out. I know that. I just know, I know that there are a lot of books out there. There are a lot of writers out there, and and that this little moment in time is very precious, and that every single person who reads the book and connects to it and contacts me, that's extremely precious. And I don't think I've ever said the word precious in my entire life. I'm not really a precious saying kind of person, but it really is. And, like yesterday, I did an event, I told you, in Montclair, New Jersey, and somebody came up to me and said, "I love your book. I love all your books. They were so important to me in my 20s." And this happened to have been recorded on video. Somebody was taking a photo, but it ended up being a recording. And you can see my face, like, saying thank you. But I didn't really take that in, and looking at this recording of this woman saying this to me this morning when I was watching it on my phone, I thought, this is incredibly great. And I have to open myself to this and respond with more than, "Hey, thanks." Like, that's really something, So
Mhm.
what I know now is that I have to take this in, which is sometimes hard to do. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
It
that's
makes
what I'm
perfect
going
sense.
for.
It makes perfect sense.
I mean, that's why we're doing this.
Yeah.
So I have to try to really connect in the moment and understand that there's something passing between us.
Yeah. All right. Traditional last question
Oh,
for this show.
okay.
If when Swanna in Love is made into a movie or a series, what do you think would make a good theme song?
Oh, well, I have Hungry Heart by Bruce Springsteen as my actual epigraph in the beginning.
Uh-huh.
Um, they fell in love, they knew it had to end, all in one line. Um, I am a fan of the song Native New Yorker. That would be fun. I don't know. Do you have an answer to that?
I don't know. I'm
I don't know.
I think Hungry Heart would be good just because, Springsteen is brought up in the novel as
Oh,
well.
I know what it should be. It should be Girls Just Want to Have Fun by Cyndi Lauper.
Oh, well, that's a good one too. Jennifer Belle, thank you so much for coming on. It's really been a pleasure talking to you, and I have really learned a lot as well.
Thank you so much, Kelley.
Thanks for joining us on Literary Prospects. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a review. We'll see you next time.